to just cut her and throw it up to her.
Hey, Steph, I just wanted to ask you about the production of Caitlin Clark and Kelsey.
Yeah.
Of course, Aaliyah Boston kind of doubled over today too, but I felt like Caitlin.
The quiet back corridors of the Indiana Fever practice facility are usually filled with the routine sounds of squeaking sneakers, echoing basketballs, and tactical instructions shouted over loud whistles. But late Tuesday evening, as the rest of the sports world was digesting a massive news break, the atmosphere inside the building shifted into complete silence. Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White sat inside her office, staring at a set of finalized legal documents on her desk, unable to hold back her emotions as tears fell openly, while she read through the terms of a groundbreaking $1 million endorsement deal signed by her star player, Caitlin Clark. To the average fan scrolling through social media, this was just another massive headline in a long string of financial victories for basketball's biggest prodigy. But for those who knew what had taken place behind closed doors over the preceding months, this deal was far more than a simple business transaction. It was the devastating climax of a bitter, highly personal war against a powerful male sports executive who had tried everything in his power to control, limit, and extract leverage from the young superstar before her professional journey even fully took off. What the public saw on television was only a small fraction of the reality unfolding behind closed doors during the chaotic transition from collegiate stardom to professional basketball. When Clark made her entrance into the professional ranks, she didn't just bring elite court vision and historic shooting range. She brought a massive, highly devoted fan base, capable of breaking viewership records and selling out arenas nationwide within seconds. Suddenly, traditional sports corporations and legacy talent agencies realized that the old rules of female athlete marketing no longer applied, creating intense anxiety among established industry brokers. While most rookies were expected to quietly sign standardized, heavily restricted entry-level endorsement packages, Clark was generating economic interest on par with the biggest male global icons in modern sports history. This massive financial potential drew the immediate attention of a high-ranking male sports executive, an industry heavyweight whose influence over athlete representation, corporate sponsorships, and league media deals had remained unchallenged for over 2 decades. He saw Clark's unprecedented rise, not as a chance to revolutionize women's basketball, but as a lucrative opportunity to establish complete control over her brand before anyone else could interfere with his dominance. Behind the scenes, this executive, a man accustomed to having full control over young talent and dictating the terms of their commercial growth, approached Clark's inner management team with what seemed on the surface like a generous, all-inclusive management framework. However, buried inside the fine print were restrictive clauses designed to limit her creative control, force long-term exclusivity with legacy corporate partners, and divert a massive percentage of her independent earnings directly into his agency's bank accounts. He operated under an old-school mindset where young athletes are expected to stay in their lane, defer to senior board members, and let corporate middlemen dictate their public image and economic output. When Clark's inner circle expressed immediate hesitation and demanded full independence, ownership stakes, and direct decision-making power over her long-term business portfolio, the executive's tone changed drastically from friendly guidance to aggressive posturing. What began as routine legal negotiations quickly spiraled into subtle intimidation, intense pressure tactics, and behind-the-scenes maneuvers intended to back Clark into a corner before she ever set foot on a professional court. Industry insiders recall heated closed-door meetings in high-rise conference rooms across Chicago and New York, where this executive openly scoffed at the idea of a female athlete demanding full equity rights and independent brand ownership. He firmly believed Clark's sudden surge in popularity was a temporary trend that would cool off once the physical reality and grinding schedule of professional basketball set in. He repeatedly reminded her legal team of the deep political influence he wielded across major sports networks and corporate boardrooms, subtly hinting that turning down his structure could result in negative media narratives, restricted corporate partnerships, or subtle blacklisting within elite business circles. It was a classic power play, designed to make a young athlete feel isolated, overwhelming her with fear and uncertainty, so she would yield to legacy systems. But what this executive completely miscalculated was Clark's absolute refusal to be intimidated by authority figures who didn't respect her vision. Raised with a fierce sense of personal independence and backed by a tight-knit family and sharp legal advisors, Clark refused to sign away her autonomy, setting the stage for an unprecedented corporate standoff that threatened to explode into public view. While this quiet war raged behind the scenes, Stephanie White was officially appointed as the new head coach of the Indiana Fever, stepping directly into the intense spotlight surrounding the franchise. White, a respected veteran who had spent decades in the sport as both a top-tier player and elite head coach, expected the normal challenges of integrating a generational talent into a fast-paced roster. But she quickly noticed that Clark was carrying an enormous weight that extended far beyond basketball plays and defensive schemes. During early practice sessions and film breakdowns, White observed how Clark dealt with constant phone calls from attorneys, media scrutiny, and the silent, ongoing corporate battles taking place between workouts. White, having lived through an era of women's basketball where female athletes had to fight for basic travel accommodations, reasonable salaries, and minor recognition, recognized the subtle signs of corporate pressure and took it upon herself to create a protective space for her young star inside the team facility. The behind-the-scenes conflict reached an absolute boiling point just weeks before the regular season was set to begin. Frustrated by Clark's continued refusal to surrender control over her commercial rights, the male executive made his ultimate miscalculation. He delivered a strict ultimatum, attempting to block a major independent luxury and lifestyle partnership Clark was quietly negotiating on her own, without his agency's involvement. He claimed that proceeding without his oversight violated unwritten industry protocols, and warned that he would use his media connections to frame her as difficult to work with, ungrateful, and self-centered. It was a calculated attempt to damage her reputation before her professional career fully began, hoping to force her compliance under the threat of bad press. But instead of bowing to the threat, Clark made a decisive, shocking move that reverberated through the entire sports business community. She completely severed all communication with the executive, walked away from his proposed frameworks, and instructed her legal team to pursue her endorsement contracts entirely on her own terms, cutting out legacy middlemen completely. The fallout from this sudden split was immediate and chaotic across executive suites. Furious at losing out on millions in potential commissions and losing control over the world's most marketable young athlete, the male executive allegedly tried to undermine her leverage behind closed doors. Gossip began circulating in subtle sports business columns, questioning whether Clark's team was overplaying their hand, hinting at internal friction within her management camp, and downplaying her long-term commercial appeal beyond her initial rookie hype. But Clark remained completely unbothered by the noise, focusing her energy on physical training, while her independent advisors finalized a deal that would shatter every existing benchmark for female athlete endorsements. She was negotiating directly with top-level CEOs who recognized her true global value, bypassing the outdated gatekeepers who had spent years limiting the earning potential of female stars through restrictive contract structures. The climax of this high-stakes corporate struggle occurred when Clark officially put pen to paper on a landmark standalone endorsement contract worth well over $1 million. This wasn't just a standard monetary payout. It included unprecedented revenue-sharing provisions, creative director input, custom merchandise lines, and direct equity options that guaranteed long-term generational wealth. Most importantly, it was completed entirely independent of the male executives agency network, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that Clark held all the power in the modern sports marketplace. The deal was finalized late in the evening, and when copies of the executed contract were delivered to the Fever practice facility to confirm her availability for upcoming promotional tours, the sheer magnitude of the accomplishment set in for everyone inside the organization. When Stephanie White opened the documents inside her office and realized the full extent of what Clark had pulled off, the emotional dam broke completely. Those present in the facility described seeing White drop her head into her hands, crying tears of relief, pride, and historic vindication. For White, who had spent her entire life fighting for every scrap of recognition and financial respect, in a sport historically dominated by male executives who controlled the purse strings, watching Clark dismantle an oppressive corporate structure was a deeply moving experience. White knew firsthand how many legendary female basketball players before Clark had been forced to take low-ball offers, tolerate patronizing executives, and surrender their brand rights just to play the game they loved. Seeing a young woman stand her ground against intense intimidation and emerge victorious with a historic contract was a cathartic moment that symbolized decades of quiet sacrifice, finally paying off for the entire sport. The moment White walked out of her office and into the team locker room to congratulate Clark became an unforgettable memory for everyone who witnessed it. There were no cameras present, no public relations handlers, and no scripted media statements. Just an emotional embrace between a veteran coach who had weathered the old, restrictive era of women's sports and a young phenom who was courageously leading the new one. White looked Clark in the eye and told her that what she had done went far beyond basketball wins and losses. By refusing to let an arrogant male executive control her destiny, Clark had cleared a path for every young girl who would ever pick up a basketball after her, proving that female athletes no longer needed permission from traditional gatekeepers to command top-dollar respect and total independence. Meanwhile, the fallout for the male executive who tried to break her was immediate and severe across the industry. The news of Clark's independent deal exposed his outdated methods to the entire sports business world, demonstrating that modern fans follow transformative athletes rather than legacy talent agencies. Industry publications began quietly detailing how his heavy-handed tactics and underestimation of Clark's market power had cost his firm millions in lost fees and permanently damaged their reputation among top-tier talent. Other prominent female athletes signed to his agency began asking tough questions about their own contract terms, realizing how much money and independence had been kept from them under traditional management models. His attempt to make an example out of Clark completely backfired, leaving him discredited, outmaneuvered, and isolated in an industry that was rapidly evolving past his outdated methods. As word of the full story leaked through sports business circles, the broader media narrative surrounding Clark underwent a permanent shift. The critics who had tried to portray her as overhyped or difficult were silenced by the undeniable reality of her economic dominance and poise under pressure. Corporate boardrooms across the country began reevaluating how they approached women's sports endorsements, realizing that fans were no longer buying into old media structures designed to minimize female athletes. Clark had proven that her brand was a powerful, self-sustaining force, capable of driving massive consumer engagement completely on its own terms, setting a new precedent that future generations of athletes will benefit from for decades to come. Inside the Indiana Fever locker room, the energy shifted completely following the announcement of the deal. The dark cloud of corporate distraction that had lingered over the early weeks of preparation vanished, replaced by an unbreakable sense of unity, trust, and shared purpose among the players and coaching staff. Coach White used the victory as a powerful teaching moment for the entire roster, emphasizing that their value on the basketball court was tied directly to their self-respect off of it. With their star player financially secure, fully independent, and backed by a coach who truly understood the magnitude of her journey, the Fever transformed from a young team navigating high expectations into a confident, unified force, ready to dominate the league on their own terms. As the season approaches and the spotlight on women's basketball grows brighter than ever, the bond forged between Stephanie White and Caitlin Clark during those intense months stands as a testament to the changing of the guard in professional sports. The male executive who tried to dictate her worth is now a cautionary tale of corporate greed failing against genuine talent and unbreakable resolve. Clark's historic $1 million independent deal didn't just enrich her bank account, it broke a decades-old glass ceiling and fundamentally changed how female athletes are valued, respected, and compensated forever. As fans fill arenas around the country to watch Clark play, they are witnessing far more than just brilliant basketball execution. They are watching a fearless pioneer who refused to bow to corporate intimidation, forever altering the future of sports economics and leaving the entire sports world to ponder what historic barrier she will break down next. What makes this entire situation so monumental is the ripple effect it has created across professional sports leagues worldwide. For decades, young female athletes entering professional sports were taught to accept modest rookie contracts and rely on corporate gatekeepers to secure minor local endorsements. The narrative was always centered around gratitude. Athletes were told to be grateful for whatever platform or financial crumb the traditional sports establishment decided to give them. But Clark's absolute refusal to accept that dynamic has completely shattered that compliant mindset. Industry analysts report that agents representing incoming college stars are already changing their negotiation strategies, referencing Clark's independent success to demand equity shares, creative control, and higher guaranteed baseline pay. The male executive who thought he could flex his traditional authority accidentally triggered a full-scale corporate awakening that has stripped legacy middlemen of their historically unquestioned leverage. Furthermore, the emotional reaction of coach Stephanie White highlights the deep generational trauma felt by women who paved the way in basketball. White played during an era when WNBA players had to work second jobs during the off-season, play overseas under exhausting conditions just to make ends meet, and tolerate media environments that treated women's sports as a charitable cause rather than a viable commercial product. When White shed tears in her office, she wasn't just reacting to Clark's individual success. She was mourning the lost opportunities of past legends who had the talent but lacked the economic leverage to fight back against predatory corporate structures. Seeing Clark stand toe-to-toe with one of the most powerful male brokers in sports and completely outmaneuver him was the ultimate payoff for every hardship White and her contemporaries endured throughout their careers. The strategic intelligence Clark displayed throughout the entire negotiation process cannot be overstated. While the male executive assumed her youth and lack of professional experience would make her vulnerable to corporate pressure, Clark and her close-knit legal advisors played a long-game strategy that caught everyone off guard. Instead of rushing to sign early offers to secure immediate cash flow, she built a fortress around her intellectual property and image rights, waiting for the perfect partner who respected her vision. When the $1 million deal was finalized, it sent a clear message to corporate sponsors that Clark was not interested in standard endorsement deals where an athlete simply poses for a photo shoot and walks away. She demanded and received direct involvement in product design, national marketing campaigns, and long-term profit sharing, effectively transforming herself from a traditional celebrity endorser into a genuine corporate partner and executive decision-maker. This shift in corporate power has also reshaped the internal dynamic of the Indiana Fever franchise, as they enter one of the most anticipated seasons in basketball history. With the corporate battles behind them, the team operates with a level of focus and freedom rarely seen in young squads thrust into the media spotlight. Players report that Coach White's unwavering support of Clark